Good morning. First of all, I would like to thank the conference organizers for the opportunity of presenting my work today, as well as Professor Carlo Rescigno, the Archaeological Park of Pompeii, Dr. Georg Zotti, Dr. Frank Prendergast, and Dr. Michele Silani, without whom such research would not have been possible. My talk today is placed within a wider doctoral project I'm carrying out to investigate the astronomical and topographical orientation of town in ancient Campania, south of Italy, from the 8th to the 3rd century BC. As you know, in 79 AD, a volcanic eruption crystallized the city of Pompeii. Pompeii was founded during the 7th, 6th century BC by Etruscan Italic population. As you can see from the slide, the red dots represent the archaic findings, even though they are not enough to fully understand the urban shape of the town at the time of its foundation. Nevertheless, the all-wall circuit was already present at the time of the city foundation, but most of the area within the city was left to a rural state and not edificated. Instead, the so-called Altstadt, which was previously considered the oldest part of the city, now it is regarded as a restriction of the town during the 5th century BC, at the time of Greek-Etruscan conflict, which impacted on the whole Campanian plain. After the conflict, the Samnite population occupied the city for a few centuries, and after them the Romans. To fully understand the diachronic evolution of the morphology of Pompeii shape, it is necessary to focus on the rose diagram. Here it is shown that there is one prevailing direction constituted by a 60-degree azimuth, which is represented by streets such as Via delle Terme, Via della Fortuna, Via di Nola, and Via dell'Abbondanza. In particular, Via Stabiana, which is the main north-south axis, it has been stated that it follows the contours of a natural canyon. Indeed, it acts as a water drainage during heavy rains, but it is possible to point out that not only geomorphological constrictions act as a factor in shaping the urban form, as you can see, of course, by the map, with the many steps in height on the plateau on which Pompeii arose, but there are more factors in the urban shape. Indeed, the east-west axis has the same orientation of Herculaneum, one which is a nearby settlement, and Eric Nissen suggested for the first time at the beginning of the 20th century that Via di Nola was oriented towards the position of summer solstice sunrise. Therefore, to test Nissen's hypothesis, it was necessary to build and reconstruct the landscape around the city, and a fieldwork was carried out last year to measure the position of the sun with a total station and with a gnomon, and as well to assist to the astronomical event. And it is necessary to state that we have already a very good cartographic map of the town, so it was not necessary to measure the architectonic features. Therefore, the data analysis from the fieldwork had to deal with different corrections, such as the obliquity of the ecliptic for the 7th-6th century BC, and you can read all the details of the data analysis by following the link towards the recent publication here. As a result, it has been pointed out that Via di Nola Midway Line and Via dell'Abbondanza show an error of respectively 1.3 and 1.2 degrees in respect to the position of summer solstice rising sun in 600 BC. Instead, Via delle Terme show the best fit to the position of the rising sun. Therefore, if last year we went on the eastern part of the town to assist to the rising solstitial sun, this year we observe the phenomenon from Via delle Terme. And even though it was a bit cloudy, we could photograph the sun rising in line with the street. And the field work this year was accompanied by an outreach event promoted by the Archaeological Park of Pompeii, who opened the park to around 100 visitors to assist to the archaeoastronomical event. But how we should interpret such preliminary result? Because we know that there are many cities, many urban grids in the Italian peninsula, and not only in the Italian peninsula, who show an orientation towards the solstices. In particular, I can mention Ostia near Rome, or Verona in northern Italy, or Acerra in the Campanian plain, as well as Herculaneum just a few kilometers away from Pompeii. To interpret the role of the solstice in Pompeii, we can follow two pathways. The first, if we follow Eric Nissen Foundation Day theory, we can state that a city orientation reflects the position of the rising sun on the day of its foundation. It means that, according to Nissen, Pompeii was founded on the day of summer solstice. Instead, according to Gaetano Vinaccia equisolar orientation, a city which shows an orientation towards the solstice has the best irradiation across the year. It means that the northern side of a building, which is usually the coldest part of the building, is always illuminated by the sun every day of the year, even on the shortest day, on winter solstice. It means that, according to Vinaccia, the orientation towards the solstices is functional for the city irradiation. Therefore, the ritual and the functional interpretation, I think they should not be read in contrast but integrated together to fully understand the role of the sun in Pompeii. Moreover, as a further evidence of the ritual interpretation, it is possible to notice that there is another important and archaic structures which show an interesting orientation towards summer solstice. This is the Doric temple, which has an azimuth of 300 degrees if looked towards the cella. And in particular, if we build the landscape around the temple, we can notice that the winter solstice sunrise is delayed by the mountains, so do not align with the temple axis, but summer solstice sunset on the opposite side does align with the temple axis. Therefore, the Doric temple, it is suggested that it attests the importance of summer solstice in Pompeii since the middle of the 6th century BC. Even if we cannot date the urban grid, we can suggest that the solstices were observed already at the time of Pompeii foundation, and if we prolong the main axis of the temple, we can notice that it also crosses diagonally the later Capitolium, the most important temple in the Roman period, and it meets with the other summer solstice sunrise line in Via delle Terme with an angle of 120 degrees, still visible in the viability in the junction between Via delle Terme and Via Consolare. Moreover, as a further evidence of the importance of the Doric temple in Pompeii foundation, it can be recalled the presence of the so-called Iron, which is a founder tomb, even though there are no funerary remains, just 1 meter in front of the Doric temple, but which can also be interpreted as an aguraculum, which is a ritual platform built and used by Etruscan, Italic, and later Roman population to inaugurate and consecrate space. So I want to argue that the Doric temple had exactly that function. Moreover, this year fieldwork attests the importance of summer solstice sunset for the orientation of the Doric temple and the Iron. But it is also necessary to understand and to study the illumination, the natural illumination within the temple and the cella. Indeed, a cooled statue base was recovered, dislocated in respect to the temple axis. And if we know that the temple was dedicated to Minerva, it has been suggested that another statue was placed symmetrically to the first one in respect to the temple axis, and it was probably Heracles, who was the companion of the goddess, as recalled by the serpent head which decorated the temple and which might meant the Hydra of Lerna, the second labor of Heracles. However, I would argue that such deviation of the cult statue base might also be explained by with the necessity of illuminating the statue on a precise day, which is winter solstice. As I mentioned earlier, the sun rises at winter solstice, not in line with the temple axis, but a bit on the left, just enough to penetrate and enter diagonally the cella and illuminating the statue displaced on the right. Moreover, the fieldwork this year was carried out using different sophisticated tools such as a laser scanner for building 3D models and a ISTAR 360-degree camera to photograph a spherical landscape and a differential GPS for georeferencing our model and picture. The fieldwork had the scope of building a 3D model of the site to be integrated within Stellarium Scenery 3D and a 3D model of the landscape built with a digital terrain model with a 10 meters resolution, which has the great advantage of being realistic even if moving around the city and changing perspective. With the normal configuration of Stellarium, we could test the position of the sun in respect to the skyline today and in the 7th-6th century BC from different points in the city and add the light and shadow effect to understand the irradiation of the town as Gaetano Vinaccia suggested. Finally, There are more issues to be considered, such as evaluating the differences in urban orientation according to the historical period, as well as integrating and finalizing the virtual reconstruction through Stellarium Scenery 3D plugin for irradiation analysis, and finally to understand the role of the Doric Temple in Pompeii ritual foundation and its natural illumination. Thank you for listening.